VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk. Ladies and gentlemen, it was 1 week ago today, July 15, 2025, that U.S. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin held a hearing entitled Voices of the Vaccine Injured. Now, Senator Johnson is the chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. They heard from 5 witnesses who discussed vaccine injuries and 2 witnesses who discussed vaccine efficacy. What's interesting is that on the very day of this hearing, WND.com released a story concerning an undercover video by the O'Keefe Media Group who allegedly caught a scientist with Johnson & Johnson on undercover video who indicated that proper testing was not done on the COVID shot. Here's the article from WND.com. A scientist for Johnson & Johnson, one of the corporations that assembled a COVID shot during the China virus pandemic, has confirmed in an undercover video that proper testing wasn't done. The effectiveness was unknown, and somebody eventually will get sued over the catastrophe that developed for Americans. The comments were reported by O'Keefe Media Group, which released undercover video and a subsequent video in which the scientist identified as Joshua Rice, a lead regulatory scientist for Johnson & Johnson, tried to avoid questions about his comments. This report noted that the scientist confessed that the J&J COVID shots were not safe and effective, and there was a lack of basic research done. He said people wanted it. We gave it to him. At one point, they explained was a move to just throw the vaccine to the wind and see what happens. In fact, vaccines made by under other companies, including the mRNA technology, have been found to give people a higher risk of multiple side effects, including heart failure. The Food and Drug Administration in 2022 announced it would limit who can take the J&J shots because of a serious risk of blood clots. Well, a report from the Gateway Pundit explained that 2 years ago, Senator Johnson called for Congress to investigate vaccine manufacturers in the COVID vax approval process in response to Project Veritas's explosive undercover video exposing Pfizer's alleged plans to mutate the virus. That video showed Tristan Walker, Pfizer Director of Research and Development, admitted the pharma giant exploring mutating COVID-19 via directed evolution so the company can continue to profit off the vaccines, was the implication there. Well, that story came out last Tuesday and the very day Senator Ron Johnson was holding these hearings. Now, I do want to say at this hearing that 2 witnesses gave testimony who said that their loved one died from vaccine-preventable disease, namely that of the flu virus. It was their testimony that had their loved one had the flu shot available to them, they would not have died. The 2 who gave that testimony included Eric Stein, the brother of Jessica Stein. His sister died of influenza. The other individual was Cerise Murata, the mother of Joseph Murata, whose son died following the flu illness. Today on Crosstalk, you're going to be hearing testimony from several individuals, including Emily Tarsell, the mother of Christian Tarsell, whose daughter died following the Gardasil vaccination. Dr. Brian Hooker, father of Stephen Hooker, who is vaccine injured. You'll hear from Dr. Robert Sullivan, who is vaccine injured, and from Polly Tommey, whose son is vaccine injured. And then finally from Krystal Cordingley, the mother of Corbyn Cordingley. Her son died following the flu vaccination. But there are many voices that have been silenced as it relates to talking about vaccine injury. These testimonies have not been allowed out. According to OpenVAERS.com, that's a vaccine adverse event reporting system. This system was put in place in 1990. It's a voluntary reporting system that's been estimated to account for only 1% of vaccine injuries. OpenVAERS is built from the HHS data available for download at vaers.hhs.gov. Since 1990, there have been 2,676,659 reports of vaccine adverse events in VAERS. Of those, through June 27, 2025, of that 2.6 million, 1,665,264 adverse events reports are connected with the COVID shot alone. Very interesting information that is on the VAERS website, and we encourage you to go there, check it out for yourself, and to see that information. Again, according to Open VAERS, just looking at the COVID shot through June 27, 2025, over 1.6 million reports of adverse events have taken place. According to their site, which I looked again just within the last couple of hours, again, this is our data through June 27th, there have been 38,709 deaths from the COVID shot or an adverse event related to the COVID shot, over 221,000 hospitalizations, over 156,000 urgent care visits, over 248,000 doctor office visits, over 17,000, nearly 18,000 Bell's palsy, over 5,100 miscarriages, over 22,000 heart attacks, over 28,000, nearly 29,000 myocarditis and pericarditis, over 73,000 permanently disabled, and it goes on. 47,000 excess severe allergic reaction, over 16,000 who developed shingles. Again, an adverse event report from the COVID shot. Now, again, today we're going to be hearing testimony from various individuals who spoke at this hearing last Tuesday. It was called Voices of the Vaccine Injured. And want to hear, in their words, what went forth before this committee. I don't think you're going to hear this on your nightly newscast, but wanted to, and as a result of that, wanted to bring to your attention here on Crosstalk today. Again, this is Senator Ron Johnson's committee. He had some opening remarks, which will air in this segment. In our segments after this today on Crosstalk, you're going to be hearing firsthand testimony from individuals sharing testimony at this particular hearing. But again, you can simply go to the websites and on Open VAERS and see for yourself the information that is being stated there as to the number of adverse events. But keep in mind, again, it's estimated only 1% of the adverse events are being reported. So right now we're going to go to audio from this committee hearing. Senator Ron Johnson convened this last week, Tuesday. He had these opening remarks. I'll have some more comments then before our break, and then we'll get into quite a bit of testimony here in our next segment. And we do encourage you to stay with us here today on the broadcast. Right now, let's go to Senator Ron Johnson as he made the opening remarks.
In our first hearing of this Congress titled The Corruption of Science and Federal Health Agencies, How Health Officials Downplayed and Hid Myocarditis and Other Adverse Events Associated with the COVID-19 Injections, I asked Dr. Joel Walscock, an orthopedic surgeon injured by the COVID injections, to describe how those suffering from COVID injection injuries felt. His one-word answer: abandoned. The purpose of today's hearing, titled Voices of the Vaccine Injured, is very simple: to give a platform to those individuals and families who have been abandoned, their injuries and suffering dismissed and forgotten. In addition, we will also hear from witnesses whose lives were devastated by fatal cases of severe influenza. We all fear death and disease. The appeal of a simple shot that can prevent both is obvious and powerful. Unfortunately, this strong appeal has overridden critical thinking and prevented rigorous cost-benefit analysis from being done. The faith in vaccines and vaccination policy is protected with religious-like zeal, and those questioning them are viewed as apostates, dangerous apostates, more than deserving of the scorn, vilification, and retribution heaped upon them. An open-minded review of the history of vaccination dating back to Edward Jenner, the creator of the smallpox vaccine, is both interesting and enlightening. Reading books like Dissolving Illusions, Turtles All the Way Down, and Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality, or a May 21st, 2025 Substack by Toby Rogers titled Mapping the Entire Field of Autism Causation Studies in One Article, certainly opened my eyes, and I sincerely hope will open millions more. And while I haven't mentioned it, I'd like to enter Toby Rogers' article, Substack, into the record without objection. It'll be entered. Understanding the recent history of vaccines is essential to developing a fair-minded viewpoint. In the early 80s, investigative journalists and lawsuits were beginning to highlight the harms caused by vaccines. This led to jury awards for injuries and the withdrawal of pharmaceutical companies from vaccine manufacturing and distribution. The availability of vaccines was at risk. This legitimate concern was addressed with the passage of the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, which led to blanket immunity for vaccines through subsequent regulation. An explosion in the number of vaccine doses on the childhood schedule was a result. According to Mr. Rogers, quote, prior to 1986, there were 3 routine vaccines totaling 7 injections. Today, the CDC's maternal and child and adolescent vaccine schedules include 19 vaccines requiring 76 injections with 94 total doses of antigen. In August 1997, the FDA under President Clinton's administration issued draft guidance to allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise directly to consumers beyond print media into TV and radio. According to one estimate, drug companies spent $10 billion on direct-to-consumer advertising in 2024, currently accounting for almost 25% of evening news ad minutes on major networks. That amount of spending has paid off handsomely for Big Pharma and its ability to control the narrative and suppress stories of drug and vaccine injuries. But to understand the true reality we face, there's nothing like hearing from those who have suffered the adverse events that are rarely acknowledged by the medical establishment, federal health agencies, and the corporate media. Today we have 5 witnesses who will tell how drug and vaccine injuries have impacted their lives. We will also hear from 2 witnesses who advocate for, quote, routine immunizations across the lifespan, unquote, because they lost loved ones from a disease vaccines were intended to prevent. Thank you for all taking the time to appear before us today. As difficult as it will be for you to testify today, it's important for the American public to hear your testimony.
So with that, Senator Ron Johnson gave time then for the ranking member to also speak. He made a lengthy presentation. But I want to get to the witnesses that came before this testimony. Again, 2 that were advocating for vaccinations. Their loved ones, they said, would have been saved had they had access to the flu vaccination. But the others go also into great detail as to the harmful effects that they saw from various vaccinations, and some pertaining to Gardasil, and also that pertaining to the COVID shot, the MMR vaccine, as well as to others as well. So we'll be taking our break in doing this, but this is from the committee hearing that happened just 1 week ago today, July 15, 2025. And again, I quoted some numbers early in the program today. You can find them on this website, openvaers.com. That's VAERS is spelled VAERS, openvaers.com. And again, it is believed that it's estimated to account for only 1% of the vaccine injuries. And this is billed from the HHS data available for download at vaers.hhs.gov. We'll be back with some of that testimony right after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. The topic today, voices of the vaccine injured. Back in 1 minute.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, how fast do stars change from one type of star into another?
Chris, evolutionists are fond of saying that changes in stars take millions of years to occur. But it's important to remember that they've never seen stars do anything for millions of years. And yet sometimes we do see stars undergo dramatic change quickly. Recently, a star was observed to change in only a few years from a white dwarf star about the size of the Earth to a giant star 80 times wider than the Sun, an increase in volume of over 500 million. Evolutionists used to insist that such changes took long periods, but when we see it happen rapidly. Evidently, the biblical doctrine of recent creation of all things is accurate. Back to Genesis, that's the view that fits the facts.
For more on Genesis, visit our website at icr.org. This is Chris O'Brien. Thanks for going back to Genesis.
listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, and friends, one of the things that came out in this committee hearing is the explosion of the number of vaccinations and the number of injections. As he quoted there, Ron Johnson, in the earlier remarks, prior to 1986, 3 vaccines with 7 injections. Now it's 19 vaccines, 76 injections, 94 total doses of antigen. Senator Ron Johnson held a hearing entitled Voices of the Vaccine Injured. He's chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. We're going to be hearing from 5 different witnesses on the program today. He will introduce each one, and let's get underway.
Our first witness is Ms. Emily Tarsell. Ms. Tarsell is a retired psychotherapist and former president of the Licensed Clinical Professional Counselors of Maryland. She's here today to talk about her daughter, Christina. Ms. Tarsell.
Chairman Johnson and committee members, thank you for this important hearing. My name is Emily Tarsell. I'm a retired psychotherapist and a mom. I was blessed with Christina, a healthy, bright child who grew to be a beautiful, caring person, gifted athlete, artist, honor student. In 2008, my 20-year-old daughter had her first GYN appointment. The doctor recommended the HPV vaccine, and we were told it was safe and effective and would prevent cervical cancer. We were not given any literature. We were not told of any adverse side effects. Ads conveyed a sense of urgency about getting Gardasil before exposure to HPVs. So Chris had always gotten the childhood vaccines and agreed to the shots. After vaccination, my daughter developed new conditions: joint pain, chronic sinus congestion, intermittent rashes, rapid heartbeat, dizziness on standing, unusual fatigue, and arrhythmia. We saw doctors, and Chris had an EKG, which came back normal, so we thought everything was okay. We later learned that this was the wrong test, and Chris should have had a Holter monitor. No one connected the dots because even doctors are uninformed of vaccine adverse events. She continued with the shots, and 18 days after the 3rd shot, she was found dead in her bed at college. You cannot imagine the hell of seeing your child lifeless. You struggle with the reality. How does a healthy young lady with no pre-existing conditions suddenly die in her bed? An extensive autopsy ruled out drugs, trauma, or organ issues, and cause of death was undetermined. We did not connect Chris's symptoms to vaccination initially until we discovered multiple reports from others too. My doctor advised me to file a VAERS report. I also called the FDA. They did no follow-up with me and took a year to obtain her medical records. They did one test for strep, which was negative. End of their investigation. Conclusion, cause of death undetermined. Merck, the manufacturer, also filed a VAERS report and gave a false and unsubstantiated explanation for Chris's death. Finding out what happened became my mission. I connected with other moms, experts, reporters, and with Diane Harper, the lead investigator during clinical trials for Gardasil. She was critical of the fast-track approval and of the marketing of the vaccine. I learned too late that HPVs clear on their own 90% of the time, and that cervical cancer is almost entirely preventable with Pap screening. I learned that the incidence of HPV-related cancers is very low at 0.001%. I learned it has never been proven that the vaccine prevents any cancer. And I also learned that pharma is protected by law against lawsuits for vaccine injuries. Our only option for investigating Chris's death was to hire an attorney and file a claim in the NVIC program. My super attorney, Mark Sadaka, filed our claim against HHS in March of 2010. Our world-class experts, immunologist Dr. Schoenfeld and cardiologist Dr. Eldar, were prepared to describe at the molecular level how Chris had died from a fatal arrhythmia induced by an autoimmune response to Gardasil, which caused antibodies to attack the calcium channel in her heart. After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Chris died from her HPV vaccinations. Chris died from a vaccine she never needed, which was falsely advertised to prevent cervical cancer. She was the 23rd of 32 deaths reported in 2009. By 2023, there were 73,366 VAERS reports, including 555 deaths. Only 1% get reported. Additionally, of that 1%, almost 70% of the reports came from Merck, and 9 out of 10 of those reports lack sufficient information for follow-up. And despite this gross underreporting, FDA stated there were 3 times more adverse events reports for Gardasil than all other vaccines combined before COVID. The public has been misled and misinformed about the risks and benefits of the HPV vaccine. And to that end, I am here on behalf of Chris to raise awareness to help others. Our website, GardasilHPVTruths.com, has much documented information, including 90-plus studies. Thank you for listening.
So that was Emily Tarsell who spoke. She's the mother of Christina Tarsell. Her daughter died following the Gardasil vaccination, as she testified before this committee hearing held by Senator Ron Johnson 1 week ago today. We're going to go to another testimony that was given at this hearing, and this one is from Dr. Brian Hooker, or Stephen Hooker, rather. Brian Hooker, who is the father of Stephen Hooker, but Senator Johnson will do the introductions here.
Our next witness is Dr. Brian Hooker. Dr. Hooker is the Chief Scientific Officer at Children's Health Defense. He is a doctorate in biochemical engineering. He's here today to talk about his son, Stephen. Dr. Hooker.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. My name is Dr. Brian Hooker. I serve as the Chief Scientific Officer of Children's Health Defense and Emeritus Professor at Biology at Simpson University. My son, Stephen, was born on February 10th, 1998, and was a healthy baby boy. My wife and I made sure he was vaccinated on time per the CDC schedule. I didn't really know what a vaccine adverse event was at the time and thought I was doing the best for my son. Steve was born in the thimerosal era, where most hepatitis B, Hib, and DTaP vaccines distributed in the U.S. contained upwards to 25 micrograms of mercury from the preservative thimerosal. By my son's 15-month well-baby checkup, he was exposed to an accumulated total of 237.5 micrograms of mercury, and in 2 of his checkups at 2 and 6 months of age, received a single-day mercury exposure of 62.5 micrograms, which exceeded the current EPA safe exposure limit by nearly 200 times. Prior to his 15-month well-baby checkup, Steve had been diagnosed with developmental delays, a chronic ear infections, and upper respiratory infections. We treated these infections with antibiotics and Tylenol as a fever reducer. On the same day as my son's 15-month well-baby visit, he was diagnosed with an ear infection by an otolaryngologist. My wife and I still dutifully took Steve to his well-baby checkup afterwards, but we questioned the attending nurse practitioner whether he should receive his vaccines while he was sick. The nurse practitioner brushed off our concerns, indicating they didn't have any problems associated with vaccinating sick children. That day, he received the Hib and DTaP vaccines, as well as the oral poliovirus live virus vaccine. This overtaxed his immune system, which was already fighting an ear infection, and he fevered for 18 days after that checkup. The pediatrician told us to treat the fever again with Tylenol. No one at the office mentioned the possibility that my son was having an adverse reaction to his vaccines. After his fever, he very quickly and severely regressed. He stopped talking altogether. He did not respond to his name. He lost all joint attention, would constantly stare into space, and even lost his ability to walk unassisted for the first 3 months following vaccination. His bowel movements were either explosive diarrhea or debilitating constipation. At his 18-month checkup, he was diagnosed with full-blown autism by the same pediatrician who gave him all of his vaccines. Not only does my son have autism, but he has also been diagnosed with mitochondrial dysfunction, tics, speech and language delays, non-organic sleep disorder, sensory integration dysfunction, ileitis, colitis, esophagitis, and whole body dyspraxia. At 27 years old, he still cannot speak. My son was a petitioner in the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program for 16 years before his case was thrown out by the special master prior to oral arguments. Vaccine courts, with its capricious statute of limitations, would not consider any vaccines prior to his 15-month shots and ruled that he had had autism earlier because he was pulling his ears at 6 months. No one in the DOJ directly opposing my son in court seemed to notice that he was pulling his ears because of recurrent ear infections. My son requires 24/7 care, and his severe dyspraxia means that he is a prisoner in his own body, a body that betrays every time he tries to execute any intentional task, such as eating, talking, walking, grabbing, or grasping any object. He also suffers excruciating chronic pain to gut dysbiosis and neuroinflammation. Nobody wants to see their child go through chronic debilitating pain. My son will never pay taxes. He will never hold a job. He will never play baseball. He will never write a poem. He will never go out on a date. He needs assistance. Despite his best efforts and despite his best wishes, he needs assistance toileting every time. Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period. Our story is not welcome in the news media, and social media completely censors us. My family has been gaslighted repeatedly, and my son's medical history has become fodder for astroturfers' blogs, as well as the CDC researchers armchair quarterbacking his vaccine injury case. My son's life has been ruined physically and emotionally, and he is persecuted by the mere fact that he exists. Life is hard, but Jesus Christ is good every day.
You know, I appreciate what he said at the end about life being hard, but his testimony of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ indeed is good. And that was Dr. Brian Hooker, the father of Stephen Hooker. His son is vaccine injured, and he gave testimony at Senator Ron Johnson's hearing. Senator Johnson is chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, and 1 week ago today, he held a hearing entitled Voices of the Vaccine Injured. And they heard from a number of witnesses there. We mentioned 5 witnesses who discussed vaccine injuries, 2 witnesses who discussed vaccine efficacy, advocating on behalf of vaccine, had their loved ones had access to it. We're going to be taking a quick break, and when we come back, we have a couple more testimonies we're going to be hearing from, one of which is a medical doctor himself who is vaccine injured. He's an anesthesiologist. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
For over 200 years, the American judicial system has upheld a standard so strong that a person's very life can be ended based on this level of confidence. A verdict supported by evidence that is beyond a reasonable doubt. Did you know there is evidence demonstrated beyond a reasonable doubt that we have a creator? Most are unaware of it because it has been censored from textbooks. Now, you can have this information at your fingertips. In the beautifully illustrated hardcover book, Have You Considered? Evidence Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, Bruce Malone and Julie Von Vett provide a series of unique devotions presenting evidence for every day of the year that points to the Creator. It's written in an easy-to-read format so that young and old can learn. Have You Considered is available for a donation of $18 or more from VCY. Call 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, a special, unique program today to really be a voice whose voices have been stifled across legacy media, even social media. Many of these have not enabled their testimonies to go forth. And friends, we're talking about, the hearing was called Voices of the Vaccine Injured. Now, when you look at the VAERS website and open VAERS, you'll see just a huge spike in adverse events that were reported in the year 2021. That's when the COVID shot came out. Another spike in 2022, and they've been declining since 2021. But many adverse events and hospitalizations, again, spiking. They indicate on VAERS that the COVID vaccine hospitalization reports, the vast majority of hospital reports are those who had the Pfizer vaccine, followed by the Moderna vaccine. And also, certainly, the number of individuals has been largely female over male that has been hospitalized, according to the charts on their website. But friends, right now we're going to continue with testimony that you're hearing today. This was from Senator Ron Johnson's committee hearing, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. And we're going to be hearing from two more individuals. First of all will be a medical doctor whom Senator Johnson will introduce. The second is the mother of a son who is vaccine injured. So let's continue right now with the next introduction coming to us by Senator Ron Johnson.
Our next witness is Dr. Robert Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan is a licensed physician and board-certified anesthesiologist over 20 years of active practice in Maryland. He is here today to talk about his vaccine injury following his COVID-19 injection. Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Senators. My story is not as bad. The same month I received my first COVID mRNA shot, I was featured in the Wall Street Journal's What's Your Workout column for aerial circus arts. I was strong, healthy, and thriving. Just 3 weeks after my second dose, I couldn't go up a flight of stairs without gasping for air. I became short of breath doing even simple things, walking, standing, even speaking. I had constant chest pressure, arrhythmias, and overwhelming fatigue. I cannot overstate the misery. It felt like my body was failing me. I was experiencing right heart failure. Still, I questioned myself. Was this real or in my head? Then an echocardiogram confirmed the damage. I was relieved that it wasn't imagined and stunned to realize this is how I likely die. The diagnosis was pulmonary hypertension. I had damage and narrowing of the blood vessels in my lungs, restricting blood flow and straining the heart. This isn't like regular high blood pressure. Pulmonary hypertension is usually progressive and fatal even with treatment. There is no cure. It felt like a death sentence. I reported my case to VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. Most doctors I know had never heard of it. Fewer understood that it carries mandatory reporting requirements. I was never taught about VAERS in medical school. I'm told it still isn't. Eventually, VAERS collected my medical records. I expected to hear from the FDA or CDC. I never did. I believed in the system. I believed I would be heard. When I wasn't, I channeled that disbelief into collaborating with the British Medical Journal on a report about the system's failures. What I learned is chilling. If you are harmed, you are on your own. I've had to adapt. Maybe some of the novel treatments I tried helped. On the outside, I look fine. I returned to running, even to aerial arts. That brings me joy, but also unease. I've lost half my lung capacity. If I can look this normal while carrying that much damage, how many others are out there suffering silently? In researching my condition, I found the Georgetown scientist who predicted my specific problem. The very same month of the vaccine rollout, he warned that spike protein exposure, whether from the virus or from the shot, could harm the blood vessels in the lungs and placenta. Spike protein itself from the SARS-1 virus, SARS-1, also caused vascular damage in animals. I learned many hospitalized COVID patients developed pulmonary hypertension. Autopsies showed the same kind of lung vessel damage I had. Long COVID patients with persistent breathlessness have the same findings. As in my case, their symptoms improve, but the damage remains. We now know the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein can damage the lungs, heart, and brain in animals. It is toxic, irrefutably so. I know that's uncomfortable to hear. One study found athletes who got mRNA boosters saw drops in aerobic capacity equivalent to aging 5 to 10 years in just 1 week. Why is this? I now see colleagues and patients struggling with daily tasks. Many are limited by unexplained shortness of breath. Could this be a spectrum of vascular damage like what happened to me? These are urgent questions. This is not normal aging. This is not simple deconditioning. Until we study this systematically, we won't know how many have been injured by COVID or by the spike protein itself. Our medical system must honor its foundational oath, do no harm. When harm does occur, the right thing is to recognize it, acknowledge suffering, and work to relieve it while advancing research into safer therapies. Government must serve as a safeguard, restoring accountability, transparency, and public trust. And above all, every medical decision must be grounded in truly informed consent. Patients deserve and demand clear, honest information. The freedom to decide what's right for them is a right. Mandatory medicine is not medicine. Acknowledgement matters, being seen, heard, and believed. That is the first and perhaps most important step in healing. To others who have been harmed, I see you. While our injuries differ, I understand the suffering and isolation that comes when the system meant to protect you instead abandons you. I believe you. Senator Johnson and members of the committee, thank you for giving us this opportunity to start to heal.
So that was Dr. Robert Sullivan, an anesthesiologist who was injured, vaccine injured, and gave testimony before the committee hearing last week. Again, this is Senator Ron Johnson holding this committee entitled Voices of the Vaccine Injured. We're going to be hearing one more in this segment, and Senator Johnson is going to introduce this guest as well.
Our next witness is Ms. Tommey. Ms. Tommey is the director of Children's Health Defense TV and is an internationally recognized health freedom advocate, filmmaker, and author. She is here today to talk about her son, Billy. Ms. Tommey.
My son Billy entered the world as a healthy, perfect baby with an APGAR score that reflected his perfection. We followed every wellness check, every vaccination schedule, believing in the system that promised our child safety. For his entire first year, Billy thrived, meeting milestones, crawling, babbling, growing. Yet everything changed at 13 months, the day he received the MMR vaccine, the only one on the schedule back then. That day, I walked into the doctor's office, trusting the advice of professionals who emphasized the importance of vaccinating against deadly diseases like measles. Billy had just finished a round of antibiotics, but the nurse reassured me that the MMR vaccine was essential. Like any diligent parent, I followed these instructions. Hours after the vaccination, Billy's perfect world shattered. He became lethargic, sleeping for long stretches. When my husband came home that afternoon and went to check on him, Billy was convulsing, his tiny body gripped by seizures. We rushed him to hospital, desperate for answers, but the doctors, after hearing he'd had the MMR, said, "It's perfectly normal, it's perfectly common. Lots of children have seizures. He'll be fine. Antibiotics, Tylenol, he'll be fine." But he wasn't fine, and he's still not fine, age 29. He's severely sick with severe autism. We made the movie Vaxxed to try and understand and warn the world about the real dangers of the MMR vaccine. I even vaccinated my child after I had Billy because I was so pro-vaccine and so into the system. Just the MMR was the problem. But then we got out on the bus. We took a bus and we traveled around America, listening to parents around America, what had happened to them when they vaccinated their children. And what we saw was utterly horrific. We saw so much death following baby vaccines. These parents would vaccinate their perfectly healthy child, and then their child would die. We saw a video at the beginning of this about the whooping cough. I've interviewed so many parents, and one comes to mind, Carrie Bundy's baby. At 4 months old, she pleaded with the doctor, "Should I vaccinate my child? He's premature." "Oh, yes," said the pediatrician. "If you don't vaccinate your baby, he could die of whooping cough." She vaccinated that baby, and he was dead in his crib. following. That is the same story we hear over and over again. These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there, being told these vaccines are safety trialed. The safety studies are so good. Yet all we see is death and destruction over and over again. Babies, teenagers, HPV Gardasil, their ovaries are shutting down. They cannot have children anymore. The parents are reporting paralysis. Children paralyzed from the waist down. You shout out about polio to us. I have never seen so many crippled children around America. So many children in wheelchairs, unable to walk, talk, speak, on ventilation. Parents are trying to tell their story while putting a feeding tube down their child's to bleed out the lungs, bring out the lungs while they're trying to tell us what has happened. 2 little 2-year-olds who can't hold their heads up because they had one Hep B vaccine. And then you shout out about measles to us. Those 2 girls in Gaines County, they did not die of measles. Children's Health Defense have seen the medical records. We have had experts break down. Yet still, I sit here and I hear over and over again that those 2 girls died of measles. They did not die of measles. And yet the press and others consistently shout out that vaccines are safe and effective. They are vaccinate your family. We all vaccinated our families. Everybody sitting here, bar 2, vaccinated their families with catastrophic results. Over 12,000 signatures on those 2 buses of death, death, death. When will enough be enough? How many more buses? How many more children killed? How many more injured adults? And here's a question for you, the senators. Who is going to look after our children when we, the parents, are no longer around? That can't use a toilet, that will never date. All those things Dr. Hooker said. Our children are trapped at 29, 30 years old. They will never pay taxes. They need 24-hour care because of one vaccine, one moment in time. This is a national crisis that must be addressed. I want to thank Senator Johnson and his team for giving us this day that we thought would never come, that the world could hear really and truly what happened to the people of America who are broken. And this doesn't just affect the person with the injury, by the way. It affects the siblings. It affects the extended family. One of us has to be a carer for life. So this has to stop. And we implore you, please, to follow us at Children's Health Defense, at least break down the truth and get to the truth behind the science of what is really happening. No more Pfizer-sponsored science. We need independent science, and we need our pediatricians to stop getting bonuses for vaccinating our children. So thank you to Senator Johnson and his team.
Okay, that was Polly Tommey, mother of Billy Tommey, her son, vaccine injured, testifying before Senator Ron Johnson's committee last week, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. If you'd like to see the entire hearing, it's available on Senator Ron Johnson's website, which is ronjohnson.senate.gov. ronjohnson.senate.gov. And then under his news tab, click under press releases, and you'll find it listed there for July 16th, 2025, where it's listed there with that date. We're going to take a quick break. We've got one more testimony we're going to be sharing. It's a lengthy testimony. We'll get right into it after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Recently, perhaps you heard the headline, Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, put out a letter stating that he is going to reciprocate with restrictions on visas for Jews coming to America if the harassment of evangelicals by the visa department in Israel doesn't end. What? This seemed very odd. So we asked our reporter on the ground in Israel this week, Aaron, about it. And he said, oh, yes, this has been a problem going on for years. There are many Orthodox inside our interior ministry that are specifically targeting evangelicals and even Messianic Jews that want to come and live permanently in Israel. You see, folks, what this is a group, a small group, that do indeed go very hard after Christians. So we need to pray for them. But also, don't let this news story be used by people for anti-Semitism. Explain it's a specific group of people, not all Jews.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America, as today we're hearing from Senator Ron Johnson's committee last week, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. We've got one more lengthy testimony, so let's get to it right now.
Our final witness is Ms. Krystal Cordingley. Ms. Cordingley is a published scientist with over 20 years of experience in the medical field. She's here today to talk about her son, Corbyn. Ms. Cordingley.
Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to share my story, the story of how our lives were shattered in an instant and the nightmare we now live every day. My name is Krystal Cordingley. I'm a mother of 5, and this is about my son, Corbyn D. Cordingley. He was born on September 2nd, 2012, healthy, vibrant, and perfect. He hit all of his milestones early and was a bright, loving, and busy little boy. Our life before his death was full of love, joy, and innocence. I am a scientist and fully believed in the safety and effectiveness of vaccines. I never questioned them. I thought I was protecting my children by following the CDC's vaccination schedule. Corbyn received all of his routine vaccines on time, including his 12-month shots 43 days prior to his death. On October 18th, 2013, I took him in for a combo flu shot that would be administered in 2 doses. He seemed fully recovered from a recent cold, and it was a normal day. I fed my kids lunch, prepped dinner, and left for an evening shift at the hospital. That afternoon was the last time I would see my baby alive. At 8:30 p.m., my husband gave the kids a bath and rocked Corbyn to sleep. He laid him in his crib, safe and sound. When I came home from work at 11:45 p.m., I went to nurse him. What I found haunts me to this day. My baby, face down. Fists clenched, arms stiff straight to his side, body stiff and unresponsive. I screamed for my husband to call 911 and immediately started CPR. When I opened his mouth, his tongue was stiff with rigor mortis and his lungs gurgled with broken down lung fluid as I tried to breathe life back into him. I knew. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. At the hospital, after what felt like a lifetime of trying to revive him, the ER doctor called time of death. My world shattered. How could this happen? He was healthy. Nothing else was different that day, except the flu shot. I repeated it over and over to every medical professional. He got his flu shot this morning, but no one would ever consider it. I was brushed off, told it couldn't have been the vaccine. I was gaslit into believing some babies just die. But no, they don't. Not like this. I held my son's foot in the hospital until it went cold in my hand. Do you know what it's like to hold your lifeless child until their body goes cold? I prayed so hard he'd wake up that I became physically ill. His lung fluid soaked my jacket, and I've never been able to wash it. It's still in his laundry basket, along with all his other dirty clothes, untouched. Days later, I called to cancel his follow-up flu shot and told the pediatrician Corbyn had died. Her immediate response was, "I don't believe the shot had anything to do with it." The medical examiner said the same, even after I asked her to send out testing. A month later, she admitted she forgot. When she finally did send tests, none of them had anything to do with determining whether the flu shot played a role in his death. Still searching for answers, we did every genetic test available. Myself, my husband, and our daughter. All clear. 2 years later, I submitted Corbyn to a research study. They tested his brainstem and hippocampus. The lead researcher called me personally shocked. She said the damage and scarring she saw was typical in Sid's cases, but Corbyn wasn't an infant. He was 13 months old, and he was perfectly healthy. Damage, not defects, not abnormalities, damage to his brain. Despite the pediatrician denying the vaccine's role to my face, I found a note in Corbyn's records that she had filed a VAERS report just days after his death. She never told me. The report said, the parents will not be contacted. She also suggested I continue vaccinating my other children and offered hospital observation after each dose. Why offer observation if vaccines are safe? I was never given informed consent. I was never told about the lack of long-term safety studies. I was never told about the ingredients like polysorbate 80 or the fact that true placebos were never used in many vaccine trials. I was given a simple sheet saying to expect a fever and use Tylenol. I wish someone had warned me. I wish I had been told to research the vaccine inserts, to look deeper, to look at the history, the true history. I wish I had the chance to fight for his life in the hospital or given any kind of chance. I speak today not only to honor Corbyn's memory, but to urge you to ask the hard questions. Parents deserve the truth. We deserve real informed consent because no parent should have to live the nightmare I do. To all the parents listening, you can never unvaccinate, but you can wait. Wait until it's truly proven safe. One shot, one decision, one moment. That's all it takes to shatter a family forever. Thank you.
That testimony coming from Krystal Cordingley, mother of Corbyn, who died following his flu vaccination. For Senator Ron Johnson's hearing, Voices of the Vaccine Injured, held 1 week ago today, brought to you today on Crosstalk as a public service. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.